So, welcome back, family. Today, we're honored, actually more than honored, as we welcome another special guest. And I do say another special guest because all of our guests are special and unique in their own form. Now, sometimes we have these guests, and I say they're special, and you may not have heard of them, but this guest simply breaks the mold in that regards. We have Seafood Bill Phillips on the show today, family. And if you haven't heard his story yet, you just stick around because he is absolutely world renowned. One of the students who directly learned under the tutelage of the legendary Chen Man Ch'ing himself. I told you he was very special. So just sit back and listen as you see why he's been noticed in such things as USA Today, inside of Kung Fu, inside of Men's Health, and so many more publications. And also, family, by the way, if you haven't picked up his book, The Master of Five Excellences, you're simply missing out. So, no further ado, I pass the mic over to Mr. Bill himself. Bill, welcome to the show and thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me today.
It's an honor, sir. So we're going to dive into it. And I wanted to ask you something that I've been searching for personally for an answer in regards to the Tai Chi 37 form. So my background, I learned Temple Tai Chi under Master Wei Sun Liao. And I know that him and Chen Man Ch'ing supposedly played some chess together back in the day. I've seen some pictures with them. Not sure how their relationship is or was, absolutely. But we also have a 37 form. And it's a little similar to some things I see inside of Chen Man Ch'ing's form, but not quite the same. So my question to you is, Chen Man Ch'ing's 37 form, is that a form that he created, or is that something that he picked up along the line of the Yang family Tai Chi system?
He created it.
He
Um,
created.
he had studied with Yang Cheng Fu. He was a student who helped Master Yang teach. But when World War II broke out, he was teaching the nationalists and the soldiers to go fight the Japanese, and they needed something they could do quickly. And then
Mm,
from there, after the war, he saw, the tempo of life pick up, and he figured that it would be continue to be good for people in the Western hurry worry kind of mode. So he spread it to the West. Thank God for me. I'm very grateful.
absolutely, I bet you are. So, how long did you actually study with him?
I studied with him from 1970 until his passing in 1975. And I had 3 years of Tai Chi under one of his senior students first. And before that, I was doing Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and Karate. So it was kind of one step after the other, getting deeper in. And Professor taught me, he was gentle with me, but he showed me that my strength and my power and my other martial arts weren't going to help me at all in Tai Chi. And because he taught me that lesson, he started me on a quest for to become soft, to learn the technique, to become a neutralizer as well as a pusher. Uh,
Mm,
he made the rest of my life for me, really.
amazing. So his background was purely Tai Chi, according to your know. I know he had five excellences, but as far as the martial arts go, he was strictly Tai Chi.
As far as I know, some people used to say that he had some Nigong, and I know he was a doctor of Chinese medicine. He gave me medicine for my health, and the other excellences are painting, poetry, and calligraphy. And really, I think he was a master of a sixth, which is not credited in the Chinese with this title, Master of Five. But he was also a master, I think, of philosophy and ethics.
Mm. Very interesting. Well, I wanted to ask one more question, and I'm going to kind of pass the mic off. Oftentimes out in the martial world, Tai Chi world, you know, a common thought is that Tai Chi cannot be used in a martial art type of situation or self-defense or fighting. That it has to be combined with something else in order for it to work, like an add-on. Um, did you find any truth in that, or how do you feel about that in regards to Tai Chi as a type of fighting art?
The thing is this, um, I used it in, you could say, as an add-on, but the principles are 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 great. And one of the things, for example, people say, well, if I move slowly, if I ever get attacked in slow motion, I'll defend myself. But the idea is that moving slowly in any form of Tai Chi, you address tension and you release that tension. So then when you want to move quickly, you can move quickly. Also, to get power from the legs through the hips, in a lot of the karate, for example, that I see, people are throwing punches with their arms. But if you don't launch it from your legs through your hips, it's just not going to be as powerful. If you wanted to push or throw somebody, if you do it without your arms, you do it from the legs, from the hips, from the with the body, you can generate an awful lot more power. So I took the principles that I learned in Tai Chi and applied them to the judo, jujitsu, and karate that I was doing. And as a for example, in judo, I only ever made brown belt. I made black belts in the others, but in judo, I was a brown belt. And I used to play with other brown belts, and I couldn't, sometimes I throw them, sometimes they throw me. Black belts wiped the floor with me. But once I applied the principles of Tai Chi, my friends who were Nidans and Sandans, second and third degree black belts in judo, I could throw them. They could not throw me.
Mm. What principles were you specifically using a particular principle or principles in that regard? I'm
Yes.
trying to visualize that.
In Tai Chi, you learn how to what they we call take root or foothold. In judo, when somebody went to throw me, I did foothold. When they tried to pull me, I did reverse foothold. And
Mm.
when I went to throw them, also there's a lot of timing in Tai Chi. Instead of catching a foot, if I wanted to sweep it, that was down, I'd catch the foot on the way as the person is stepping and pick the guy off in midair, things like that. Also, Tai Chi helps you, push hands helps you become sensitive to people's balance. And so you learn to use those principles also in sport judo. You immediately feel where a person's weight is, and you immediately see lines to take them off that weight. Whereas in my judo training, we just used our strength and our power to just kind of rip them off the ground. In Tai Chi, I learned to touch people and feel their balance, and I learned to use that in judo.
Yeah, Phil, my question relates to forms, and I understand a lot of your background is in the Yang style. Is that correct?
My original background is Cheng Man Ch'ing. My second master, Zhang Lu Ping, taught me Yang long form, and it is different than Cheng Man Ch'ing's form. Cheng used the principles of qigong and the principles of Chinese yoga, and it is a lot less actively martial in that you cannot see what's going on. But when I learned the Yang form, long form from Zhang Luping, who learned it from Fu Zhang Wen, it was very much more martial.
The short form, the Yang short form, or what maybe some people call the 24 form. Do you use or had you used that in your past for teaching?
No, I haven't. However, well, by the way, I had heard it called a synthetic because it takes something from many forms. But I had a student in Des Moines, Iowa, and she used to use it to get people used to Tai Chi, and then she would teach the Cheng Man Ch'ing form. I'm not the kind of a person that insists you do things my way. I offer the Cheng Man Ch'ing form, and people who don't want to take it don't take it. People who want to take it, and then they have to teach it. So they have to figure out what works for them. And my student in Des Moines, Iowa, who unfortunately passed away, but she taught the 24 and then the Cheng Man Ch'ing form.
The 24 has 16, I think, separate forms in it. And of course, they're repeated to get the 24. But I was curious if you knew why those were chosen over some of the other forms that didn't show up in the 24. Or do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I thought I heard about it, but I wouldn't want to bet on it. But because my memory is so these days, but I had heard that it was created by a sports committee in the People's Republic of China.
Yeah, I think the 1956 or something in that era it was, and it was supposed to be the People's Forum. So it's what I had been using in classes, and now working with the Temple Tai Chi form, the long form. So there's there's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot more involved with the Temple form.
I think that in any traditional form, there will be a lot more involved because, on the one hand, it's a traditional form, and on the other hand, you have a lot more time to learn it. So you learn a lot more of not to say the detail of the movements, but the things that go with the movements. For example, moving slowly, smoothly, staying at the same height, um, feeling the air, feeling the energy, getting your own chi out your fingers. And so that in all of the traditional styles, I think there's a lot more of that. But I believe, and this is just totally my opinion, it's not something I heard, that the synthetic forms lack these things because the people in the People's Republic who were in charge of it didn't really believe in chi and a lot of these other things, and so they just wanted to have something done to be healthy for people, and so the moves are kind of like Chinese yoga, but it's Chinese yoga without the added enrichment that you get if you study any traditional form.
So you're calling it synthetic because it's not originally from like a master like a Chen Man Ch'ing?
No, I'm calling it synthetic because I believe the people who made it took a piece from Yang, a piece from Sun, a piece from Wu, and so it's kind of cobbled together.
I wanted to ask you, you said that your second Tai Chi teacher, the one that you learned the long form from, the Yang style long form, you said that his approach or the form is more martial. How so?
Well, Fu Wen, he got it from Fu Wen, and it
Yeah,
just the punches go up and back as opposed to up and across. There's actually in the Cheng Man Ching form they go up and across, but there's a hidden neutralization in this where you pick somebody's got their hand on your elbow and you pick it up and take it away.
right.
Um, in the in the pushes, there it's more direct line, whereas in Professor Chang's form, the elbows inscribe an arc, and so it gets chi in the hands. In the Yang long form, it's much more about pushing somebody.
Mm,
There were just a lot more of martial things there, and also for the push hands, he taught. Um, he taught around the New York and New Jersey area, among other places, and his push hands was a deal more vigorous.
yeah, I seen him bouncing some people on some videos, like slamming them into the mattress on the wall. I'm like, wow, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I seen some of that. I'm like, okay, this man's definitely got some power. So I know you have a lot of memories of your teacher, Chin Man Ching, some memorable moments. If you would share with us maybe one or two of the memorable moments that just stand out in your memory today.
absolutely. First, I don't know how he may have been intuitive, or you could even wonder if he was a little bit psychic. But when I came up to the school, I knocked on the door, and this short Chinese man answered the door, and I said, can I get Tai Chi here?" And he said, "No." I said, "Is Cheng Man Ch'ing here?" I did not know that he did not speak English. And he said, "No." And then this little old Chinese man dressed in a traditional uniform, Cheng Man Ch'ing, came up behind the man and spoke to him in Chinese. And the guy turned around and said, "Yes, new class starts next Tuesday."
Oh,
And
wow.
my next thing is, he gave me medicine for my health. I
Mm.
was very, very sickly, and he took the pulses. There are 9 pulses in each wrist. Three light, three middle, and three heavy. And he gave me Chinese medicine. But in addition, he told me about my medical past, and I didn't know that that wasn't part of Chinese medicine particularly, but he gave me these herbal prescriptions to go fill. And when I was filling it, the gentleman at the Chinese apothecary was a doctor of Chinese medicine, and I told him what Professor Cheng had told me. And I said, "Can you do that?" And he said, "I could barely tell what your health is now." The next things are really Tai Chi things. He made me a teacher in his school eventually. And that's the most treasureful, one of those wonderful things. Only 8 people ever became teachers in his school. There were the senior 6 in New York, Herman Kors, who was at the time the highest ranking non Japanese in Shotokan karate and a world class judo player, and then me. And I was a junior person. I was not a standout, and I was very enthusiastic, but I knew what I did not know. And also, his push hands. He settled down next to me. I took off. When he neutralized, I could push straight in, and he'd go all the way back. And I couldn't get, he wore these pressed uniforms. I couldn't get the press. I couldn't get the seam to touch his skin. He was that soft. And the first time I did it, I fell over myself. He just got out of my way, and it was like I was touching a cloud, and I went by. After that, I learned to stay up a little bit, and he just touched my back and sent me flying. So that was wonderful too. And that's what got me away from being judo tough, from yanking people out of their boots, so to speak, throwing them. That to learn to finesse, to touch, to feel.
So with him not speaking any English, I guess it was a lot of hands-on and touch you, fix you, or did he have a translator there as well?
He often did. He almost always did. As a
Mm.
matter of fact, he taught courses on the Confucius Great Learning and ethics. His idea of Chun Yun was not, as it's often given, the doctrine of the mean. His idea was do not too little, do not too much, do it not too early, do it not too late. You can see that there's a big difference between trying to do the average thing and at the average time and trying to do the exact appropriate thing at the exact appropriate time.
You
That's
you
right.
still teach now? How do you carry on his legacy? You know,
Well, COVID kind of did it for my school. I was teaching advanced students and they scattered to the four winds over COVID. However, I oversee schools. I have people who have schools around the country. I often forget some, but from New York on Long Island, in Santa Fe, outside Asheville, North Carolina, in
Mm.
Philadelphia, PA. I don't know uh, if Kurt has a class or not in Berkeley, West Virginia, but the people sometimes people come to me and take it back with them. But these are all people who studied in New York and then went their ways, but took the Tai Chi with them. And so when they come to New York, they take private class to correct and make sure that they're staying on target. And when I go to them, I teach their students. I also teach privately in New York when somebody beats their way beats a path to my door, but I don't charge my students because they help me make rent for so many years, and they're traveling to come see me. So for my students, it's no charge.
You're in New York?
Yes, I'm in the Bronx in New York. You know, at one time it would have been very valuable to both me and you to know that there was a long time when I was in some of the magazines that Lester mentioned when I ran a Tai Chi referral service, and the magazine would print my name, and then people would call, and I had a sometimes I didn't know where there was a teacher, but I had teachers all over the country I was recommending. Happened.
Mm.
Being in Brooklyn, there was a lot of competition. But people often came from someplace else just to check me out and stayed, and I was very lucky that way.
History wise, you had an organization called, was it Patients Tai Chi Association?
I still do. Um, it used to have I used to have a school, an active school, but now I still have the corporation, and I wrote my book in the corporation, and I'm preparing another book. I'm doing final editing on my second book, which will also come out through the corporation. I picked the name Patience Tai Chi because I had a quality of patience that I wanted to grow in myself. And I figured if I called my school that, I would always remember why I was here, what I
Oh,
wanted to do in my own self personally.
Did Master Chen Ching ever express to you what his overall, I guess, purpose behind Tai Chi? What was his reason for passing it on to others or whatever? What was his mission?
You know, it's funny with all the push hands in martial arts. He said that he was giving us Tai Chi for our health, and he was giving us Chun Yun and the Great Learning for our ethics. It was all intended, his entire body of learning was intended to make us better human beings. It
Yeah.
struck a chord with me, and have been I'm so lucky, and I've been so happy as a result.
Bill, where do you see Tai Chi going from this point on forward?
I have to admit that I'm a little concerned. On the one hand, we have many good teachers in many styles out there. But on the other hand, somebody came up with this idea of an 8-hour class to make a teacher.
Mm.
And I don't think they should call it Tai Chi, but that's what they're doing. In 8 hours, you can't even get the basics of a form, much less the basics of how to do it. And yet, I had a student uh, who teaches in parks in Brooklyn, and she was vacationing in Florida, and she saw an ad for an 8-hour class, so she went there. And the teacher was certifying everybody after teaching them a very simple form, and that was it, just the movements, and then giving them a certificate. And I have been told that a certificate of this sort is what many rehabilitation centers and old age homes want. Now, these people don't have any real idea of what Tai Chi is, which is why I'm so sorry they're calling it Tai Chi. But I'm worried that people will go to the lowest common denominator, and that we'll lose. Not that I will lose. I was a school teacher for 33 years, and I'm retired, and I have my Social Security. So it's not about money. It's about I want to pass on what I'm doing, which is why my last classes when I had my school, I taught advanced people. I taught people who'd been my students. My most senior student had been with me since 1981. And so I had more senior students, but they went their way. But the thing is that there's a body of knowledge which we want to pass on, all of us, everybody, you guys too. And people aren't going to be open to accepting it if this 8-hour thing catches on.
I find
Don't
that
you think, though, the people that want to find the truth will find it?
Yes, but I think that it will be very much fewer people than otherwise. And if you have a number of people that come to your classes that just come because they want Tai Chi and they don't know they want to be a teacher, they may discover that they want to be a teacher. I had read Robert Smith's book, Secrets of Shaolin Temple Boxing, and the one he wrote with Don Drager, Asian martial arts, I think, Asian fighting arts. And so I was predisposed to hear my teacher, Stan Israel, who was my jujitsu teacher, who was a senior student of Professor Cheng, to tell me about this little old man in Chinatown. But ironically, he never told me where the school was or how to get there. I had to knock on doors to find it for myself. But the thing is that I didn't know until I met him that I was predisposed to want to make my life Tai Chi. Um, so that if more people can find it, there'll be more good teachers and good practitioners, and even tournament champions. A number of my people have been winning tournaments for a long time. And Ben Lowe, who's a much more senior to me, he started Tai Chi, I think, the year I was born. He's passed away now, but he had champions too. So that, and then people see that and then they want to study that. And even if somebody comes in competition minded, they learn about the calming benefits and they learn about the health benefits, and they might just find that they have a calling. I did.
I'm seeing that, like libraries and really local little groups, uh, places are offering it. Okay. And I think it's expectations. People just, they don't realize they're calling it Tai Chi, but really they want Qigong.
Yeah.
They're calling Qigong Tai Chi, because they're not really, they don't, when you tell them about the martial application, their nose turns up, and it's only Tai Chi if you add the martial application to it.
The thing is this, what I'm writing in the book I'm just writing, I say that Tai Chi has a last name. It's Tuan. It's
One.
not Supreme Ultimate. It's Supreme Ultimate Fist. And in the old days, back in the 80s and 90s, I would sometimes have debates with these people that thought that Tai Chi was not martial. And I just had to tell them, look at the whole name. That should tell you something.
Yeah, I think a lot of trouble is in the name itself. People cut off, like you said, they cut off the back of the name, the fist, and they only say Tai Chi, and it's kind of misleading. I was just talking to somebody about that. So people don't really know that it is a martial art. And like Sister Pam said, the moment you mention anything about martial arts in some of these public classes, people start looking side-eyed, and it's like, I'm not
But
going to water down the teachings.
there are benefits in push hands for form and for softness. And push hands is kind of the middle ground between form and fighting. But somebody, for example, who thinks that they're soft, but yet if they do form and somebody were to hold up a broom handle in front of their arm when they're doing single whip, they'd knock it sideways. But if you practice, you do the push hands, you find out that you're stiff, you go back to the form and you do it better. And it can be the same with the martial arts. I've been lucky that I had martial arts. I was school security coordinator at the high school I worked at, and I had to fight often, and I was lucky. But the thing is that I used what I had. But there are applications in the martial arts which also help to make you soft and sensitive and go back to the form and improve your ability to be healthy with the form. So these people are just cutting themselves off from these things, probably because they never learned it. Their teachers didn't know it, so they don't know it. And the thing is that they're looking at what they don't know, and because of their egos, they're advocating, thinking that that's it. They think that all
Mhm.
I learned it all, therefore, and I didn't learn that much, but that's it. And that's a problem, I think.
But you also see, some of these well-known people, Tai Chi for arthritis, Tai Chi for health, Tai Chi for this, and people are getting their conception that this is what Tai Chi is about, and it's more than that.
That's true.
And they're certifying them too.
That's the problem. They're certifying
Hmm.
that, and they're certifying it so easy. A student needs to be with me 5 or 6 years before I would consider him an apprentice instructor. And then after that, a few more years. And if I watch and if he's doing well, he'll be an instructor. There's another whole aspect we haven't touched on here. It's more than Tai Chi, there's techniques of teaching. I was fortunate to be a high school English teacher, and I learned about what they call methods at St. John's University. So that there are ways to teach. There's the visual way, the order, the hearing. I think my words I'm losing, and the kinesthetic way to teach something, and to teach Tai Chi well. If you have something worth passing on, you want to learn the different ways to teach to help the students get it. These people have learned a very simple form, and they've only learned it in a very simple way, and they're trying to pass it on. And I wonder, I hope to God, from your mouth to God's ears, that it can be Qigong. What I have seen and what my students have seen, it's barely anything. It's a bunch of moves.
Yeah, it's not even qigong. It's that's yeah. Not that qigong is not. Qigong to me is pretty powerful. And what these people are doing, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in the qigong category either. It's not even a good dance per se.
You got it. I
You
agree
know,
with you.
I wanted to ask you this, Sifu. Um, Chen Man Ch'ing was a student of Yang Chong Fu.
Yes.
And in my mind, I'm just thinking, wow, that's just amazing, And did he share any of his stories about learning under such a powerful man?
Yes, he did. Um, One thing he said is that one of the things that Yang Cheng Fu could do was if they put a bird in his hand, he could neutralize the bird so that he couldn't take off. He would, when the bird pushed, his hand would go down, and when the bird stopped pushing, his hand would go back up. And so the bird couldn't get his feet off the ground, so the bird couldn't fly. Another thing he said is not that comes to mind is not that happy, I guess, a story, in that he said when he went to play Yang Cheng Fu the first time, he put his hand on Professor Chang's jaw, and the next thing you know, he was across the room, and everything hurt. Not only is the hand that had been on his face caused his face to hurt, but his whole body hurt. He felt like his energy was very interrupted. He
Wow.
also would say that when he was studying, he would get so tired, he would come home and sit down, and he didn't have the energy even to get into bed. He just fell over right where he was. I saw just a teeny little bit of that kind of thing when I was in class with him. And you got to understand, I started my physical exercise with cross country running in high school, then to judo and jujitsu, then to karate, then to tai chi. But he worked me out so badly. When we were at the Shurjung school, we were 4 flights up, and I'd run up the stairs 2 and 3 at a time. I go down the stairs holding on to the banister because my legs were going to collapse and I would fall down the stairs if I didn't grab the banister. So he also, one other interesting thing, this is a story third hand. Mario Napoli uh, told this
Mm.
story when I ran the 100th anniversary of the birth of Professor Cheng Man Ch'ing. And yes, I ran it a year early. I ran it in 2000. But he said that Stanley tried to dig his fingers into Cheng Man Ch'ing's legs when they were sitting, and his legs were like iron. There was no give.
Mm. Amazing. So what would the typical class be like for you guys? If
Well,
there was typical, let's say.
Well, when there was being a student and then there was correction. When I was in correction with him, there were 50 or 60 people in the class, and do he would show us some Tai Chi, which is something that he always did, even back to Ben Lowe's time. Though Ben Lowe would say that he didn't correct, he expected you to learn it. But then he would come around and correct, and thereby he would kill our legs because he expected us to stay in the posture until he did the whole class. And
Oh,
so you're staying in a deep stance for like 15, 20 minutes. and
Yeah.
your legs are killing you. Then finally, when he finishes the class, everybody stands up, shakes out. You do the round of form, get to another posture, and then you stay there again for another 15, 20 minutes.
Ooh, eating bitter, huh?
Yeah. And
Wow.
then when he corrected push hands, though, that's when he would just you would line up the people against the wall with the people trying to neutralize, the people not against the wall were doing the pushing, and he would just go down the line and make little corrections. But if somebody was playing with too much strength, he would have, pushing, he would have them step out and come around, and he would push them into the wall a few times so they could feel it. He was always very soft with me and very gentle with me, though I went flying. But other people said he felt like a dump truck moving at 60 miles an hour, that he literally could slam people into walls really good. He just touched me and I started to float away like I was a helium balloon all my life. And in slow motion, I saw him reaching for and grabbing my wrist, and I'm watching my hand play out. And then when I get to the extent of my hand, boom, then I realized that I was going up on about 45-degree angle very quickly. And if he didn't grab my arm, I would have smacked the wall pretty hard.
Oh, to pull you back in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I look at some of his pictures and I can just see the energy that he's transmitting just from looking at the pictures. Like, wow, you know.
Then you are also a good chi and energy person, because that's what I find I'm doing as the Tai Chi has developed the chi in me. And but most people can't do that.
That's true. I don't know why, but it seems to be missing in a lot of people.
Well, the thing is, that maybe they weren't taught the right way.
Mm,
Maybe they didn't take it seriously. I have people, I have one person who I made a teacher, and then I found out he practices it not every day, twice a day. And I was very disappointed in that. But a
mm,
lot of people don't. And if you want to get it, you got to do it.
that's true. That's very true.
Um, the movie that was made up, The Professor, were you involved in that at all?
I was interviewed for it. If you see a guy with glasses, that might be me.
I gotta
Um,
look at it. I gotta watch it again.
Unfortunately, I didn't have input on even on what I was saying. Ken asked me questions. Ken Van Sickle, he was the official photographer for the school, and I'm very happy that he made the video. But I interjected my feelings about the Chun Yun and about being a good person, and it ended up on the cutting room floor. However, I'm there. You've seen me now. You look at the video, you'll see me. The history of my organization, I don't know that that's important, but my assessment of professors' form for teachability and for functionality, I think there's a lot of good qigong in it. There's a lot of good Chinese yoga in it, and it is teachable to everybody at some level. With only one thing I would say: if somebody has bad knees, skip over the snake creeps up, because that will kill their knees. I've had people with bad knees, and as long as I don't teach them that, their knees improve. And part of the reason is that, when you grab your quadriceps, you notice right above your knee you have a little muscle. The Tai Chi strengthens that muscle and makes the knees stronger and better. But when you go into snake, especially the way we do it, you and I mean, Lester, as I've
Hmm.
seen you, that's hard on people's knees if they don't have good knees to start with.
I find it
Um,
interesting. I find it interesting that you call it snake creeps up
Yeah.
instead of
Mhm.
snake creeps down.
well, or however your snake goes, it's also been called squatting single whip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But to me, now that you say snake creeps up, it kind of makes sense. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, the head comes up.
Yeah, it kind
Please,
of makes sense.
please forgive me, but I've used that to blast people in my week a day, my less finesse days of push hands. If somebody would try to put my arm through my chest, and I would drop away, and drop in, and they'd be leaning over me, and I'd blast them. So I thought of it that way.
Hmm. I
But
can see it.
more recently, my idea is to drop, let my raised hand go over my head, and as the person's leaning on me, I can put my hand on their chest and gently push them, because I'm not into blasting anybody. I'm not into hurting anybody. I'm
Right.
just into gently showing them what can be.
You mentioned about yoga and Chinese yoga. So how does
Yeah,
that compare to in yoga from India?
I don't know yoga from India, but Professor Cheng said that there were things in his form which were yoga, and he explained one in detail. His grass sparrow's tail, when you can get the shoulder back behind the chest, this opens a lung meridian. And he said for those that feel they have to do it on the other side, this closes the lung meridian. He said, um, oh, step back and repulse monkey and wave hands in clouds. If you do it reasonably well, you have your belly button 90 degrees to your toes, and that is good for the digestion. And there
Oh,
are other things. I forgive me. I'm not terribly prepared right now for that.
So he's using a lot of medical qigong in his form.
Yes.
Mm,
And also you get the chi. If you do, he called it the raise hands back and down. I call it the chi exercise, because if you breathe to the dantian while doing this, you'll get the chi out your hands. If you breathe to the dantian while doing it, you'll get the energy coming to your bubbling well, which is kidney one in shiatsu and in acupuncture.
hmm.
And you know, he had said that the movement should be done all in one piece. However, um, until recently, I have found that I sometimes would gently pause before I went back the other way, because I wanted to give the chi time to get into my fingers. And I've come to the conclusion on my own, this is not from him, that Tai Chi it should be one continual flow of chi. And that if you have to stop, and after all, you change directions, there's a stop as small as it may be when you're changing directions. Um, that it's not one continuous movement, but it's one continuous flow of chi.
Have you found that your form, your whatever form that you practice on a daily basis, has it changed over the years on how you do it?
You know, it's funny that you should ask that. In very small ways, as I work at it, and I was told that this was going to happen. Master Jiao Tong Hua, the guy who had the Tai Chi farm, he he was a friend, and he one time we were just sitting around talking, and he said, "Bill, the Tai Chi form is going to become your teacher." And I said to him, "You're crazy. I study with Cheng Man Ch'ing. I'm studying with Zhang Luping. I have wonderful teachers." And I'm very, very sorry that he passed away before I was able to catch him up and tell him he was right. But as you just practice, the form will show you exactly how to go, exactly how to get your spine straight, exactly how to get your hand flowing so that the energy comes out of it in the most efficient way. So he gave us tips, but it has to grow on you, which is another thing what's wrong, I think, with the 8 hour course. It doesn't start to grow on you till you've been at it for a while. And then you can see that you take your teacher's instructions and you follow them as absolutely well as you can. But then after that, you start to see where there's a little thing which maybe the teacher didn't catch. Maybe you're doing it wrong, or maybe you just learned how to do it even better and you just do it. And the form is there. If you just practice at least twice a day, it will happen.
I know what I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
I'm glad we didn't finish. This been on
yeah.
for. So some of the schools uh, seem to have conflicting opinions in regards to when you're doing the form, whether or not you imagine a partner or an opponent being there. and when you're doing push hands. You know, I think Cheng Man Ch'ing had a certain take on that.
I have a take on that, and I will tell you straight out. And some of my friends we used to imagine a partner, and in fighting, and in from the form, they would imagine the martial arts applications. And I have a one simple question for them, which cured them of it. What if you're always planning that your partner is going to do this when you practice your form and you defend against it wonderfully, and then your partner does something else? You're screwed. And also, think about thinking about it. You know, you've got to the Tai Chi mind, and this also came from Professor. They asked him if he did meditation, and his answer was no. I don't do seated meditation. I do Tai Chi. Tai Chi is the meditation. And if you're doing Tai Chi and you're keeping your mind empty, you're preparing yourself to cleave to any opponent, to do the exact appropriate physical thing at the exact appropriate physical time to win, to defeat
Mm-hmm.
them. And so you can't achieve, excuse me, you cannot achieve that if you're doing your form and imagining that you're fighting the same opponent doing the same moves. In judo, they used to say that the most dangerous opponents are beginners because they don't know what they're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would say you have to always be prepared for anything. And the best way to do that is to clear your mind, to practice keeping your mind empty so that some people can do move with their intention. Thank you.
That's what makes sense to me actually too. You know, that's the way it was taught to me. Same idea. Like you said, if you only focus on one technique to respond to one answer or one question, you're going to be in trouble if something happens. You will be doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Yeah,
By
that's
the
just
way,
me.
if I could ask Pam, who was your teacher?
Sorry, Jesse Teasley.
Okay, because I had never heard of him, but I heard of Wei Sun Liao. So that's why I asked. But it's impossible to know everybody at this point because so many people who were there in the 60s and 70s have students who have students who have students. I
Mhm.
started in 1965 when I was 18. I started Tai Chi in 1967 when I was 20, and I got to Professor Cheng in 1970 when I was 23. Ah.
That's quite unusual. Usually at that age, you know, you're used to the fast and hard stuff. You don't want to slow down, you know.
I read Bob Smith's book. And by the way, then I finally got to meet Bob Smith in 1974. And I have a funny story, if we have time for it, about Bob Smith.
You better
Um,
believe, yeah.
in 1974, at the, excuse me, 1975, at Professor Chang's memorial in New York, I met Robert Smith. And what happened was always wanted to meet him. So I read his books. I asked my mentor under Professor Chang, Morty Raphael, if we could take a picture and meet him and take a picture. And Morty said, sure. And he introduced us and we took a picture. Cut forward to the mid to late 90s. And Robert Smith is working up at William Chen's place, and William Chen was a friend. So we figured we'd go by and say hello. I brought a copy, an 8 by 10 of the picture that Bob Smith and I took in 1975. And in the 1990s, I wanted to give it to him, but he was talking when we got there. So we sat and we listened. And if you knew Bob Smith, you know he was always a fascinating speaker. So we were entertained. But then when he called the break, everybody rushed up to him. They wanted to get things signed. They wanted his autograph. And so there was either I had to cut the line or get on it. So I figured, let me get on it. So when it came up to me, I presented the picture and he was just signing things. He wasn't looking. He signed the picture, gave it back to me. And then I said, wait a minute, and gave it back to him. And then he looked at it and we both laughed.
Caught in the moment.
And then we became really friends because we would talk on the phone once a month for the rest of his life. And he always knew all of the gossip of Cheng Man Ch'ing's Tai Chi. And so I say we talk on the phone. I said hello and then I listened. And occasionally I gave him a little piece of gossip, but mainly on a half an hour call, it was 28 minutes him and 2 minutes me.
And I'm sure you Tai Chi longer than well, you started before I was even on the planet. I came into the world in '73, so you were already doing Tai Chi.
Well, I'm glad that you have gone the path that you have gone. You are the generation that's got to take over from the old timers like me. So I'm just grateful that you are on the planet and that you are seriously proceeding with Tai Chi.
100%. Yeah, it took me. I always quote my Sifu's quote that I give my life to Tai Chi and Tai Chi gives me life, and that's been true in so many ways. It's amazing how the art continues to give when you make it your life.
I agree. I think I might be dead already without it. So
Yeah,
the
myself.
health benefits. Doing it every morning and night is also it's a good discipline, but when you start doing it, the energy comes out. It's like drawing candy. And so a lot of times I get up, I say, oh, I got to do Tai Chi. But by the time I get through what I call the Chi exercise, I'm good for the whole form. I'm just so up. I finally got started into my day. By the way, I have found for what it's worth that if you did not sleep well, the Tai Chi will help in the morning will help you get sleepy and take a nap. If you did sleep well, it will leave you all charged up and ready for your day. In the evening, if you've had a good day, you do the round and it will help settle you down and let you prepare for sleep. If you've had a terrible day and you enervating day, tense day, and you haven't really exhausted yourself, it will leave you all wired up. So to have a good day and to get a good night's sleep, and then the Tai Chi will aid you in that rhythm.
It kind of balances everything out, regardless.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a question we had internally among us. When's the best time to practice Tai Chi? Or is there a correct time or better time?
Well,
So,
Professor used to say, do it in the morning and do it at night and do it in the evening. He said, do it in the morning first thing. But I have to admit, I can't. When I get up first thing, I got to brush my teeth, use the bathroom, then I do Tai Chi. And he said, last thing at night before bed, and that I can pretty much do. And he said also practice it in the middle of the day to perfect it. But he said if you're doing it morning and night, his image was the same way that the stars only move a set amount in the sky. You can't accumulate more benefit by doing it 100 times in a day. So you can improve at doing it by practicing it more often. But for the benefit, morning and night. And also, I would add, do the meditative chi round morning and night. If you want to perfect your form, do it, and you can do it then before the nighttime or after the morning time, or better yet, in the middle of the day. Um, and it will be a benefit. By the way, another story comes up. If I was a school teacher, the high school English teacher and I guess you could call it a tough school, Westinghouse Vocational and Technical. And I had this one kid, and he was a real troublemaker. He would try to talk to people in the class, and when they wouldn't, he would sit behind them and try to light their hair on fire. And I had to stay by him, and eventually he'd get tired and run out of the class. Well, one day, at the thought of him coming, I did several rounds of the chi exercise, and I happened to be standing right near his desk. And for the first time ever, he came in, sat down, and went to sleep. And I was so happy that I started doing some rounds every day by all of the chairs that he might sit in. And whenever he came, he went to sleep, and and that was just such a benefit of somebody else being able to feel my chi exercise.
that's a
Amazing.
very.
Wow.
Did
What,
you
what,
ever share your Qigong with your students?
Um, my Tai Chi students, yes. That
But
student,
no,
no.
your students in school at the school.
I formed a Tai Chi club and I formed a karate club. And the Tai Chi club had no takers. And the karate club had 50, 60 people show up for the first time. And when I explained to them that it was going to be technique and discipline and not sparring and fighting and jumping around, nobody came back the second time. So it was not what the students wanted. They had seen kung fu movies, and that's what they thought they wanted.
And this is thinking about new people who are looking for Tai Chi, uh, what advice would you give to a new person that's looking for Tai Chi? How do they get started? What route should they take? And what should they look for in regards to a good teacher?
You know, I have a chapter on that that's still in my book, though. If I get my new book, though, if I get enough pictures, it's going to get kicked out. But I would say don't study with somebody who calls himself a master because
Mm,
he's probably not. You could study with somebody that other people call a master or other people call a sifu. That's fine. But don't get involved in the ego. Also, if somebody's trying to sign you up and won't quote you a price over the phone, that's simply a, a retail problem. Don't You have to know what you're signing up for, what it's going to cost, how long is your initial commitment. Um, let's see. I have a bunch of things. I will email them to you, and you could use them as any way you want. I used to give out an article on that at my when I taught in college. I was a teacher at Kingsborough Community College, a teacher of Tai Chi for a while. And I used to give that article out because the students came from all different places and they were going to go home. And I had several things that they should pay attention to and several things that they should not pay attention to. In the article that I had based this on, it said if they're teaching in a karate school, no good. Hey, I was teaching in a karate school. Look at the form. Oh, another thing. If somebody goes to the exact same place when each time they do a posture in the form, that's a good thing. If somebody goes to a different place every time they do the form, for example, if the hand is here one time, 90 degrees, and here one time, and here one time, you
hmm.
know that they don't really know it. So how can they teach you to go to the same place if they can't do it?
Yes.
You as well. And so I am richer for having met you, and I am happier for having got to spread some knowledge, I hope.
See, what's the name of your new book? When is it coming out? How can people gain access to it?
We're probably going to do a Kickstarter with it because I have some disappointments with the guy who published the first one. The name is A Legacy of Cheng Man Ch'ing, Intermediate Instruction, Tai Chi Form, Push Hands, and Stories. And by the way, there was no room in the title, but I have a whole section on teaching, on the
Hmm.
different ways to teach.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
So the first book was pretty much my story, and but this book is pretty much instruction. And also I had other people's stories, and in this one I'm going to have some Cheng Man Ching stories which have not been told, and I'm going to have some stories of the senior students in New York, some stories of the senior students in Taiwan and Robert Smith, as well as some advice from professor professor's 10 points on Tai Chi, my 10 points on Tai Chi, um, in memoriam for my students who passed away, and a listing of my students who teach and where they are. Um, so I'm going to cover a lot of stuff. The first chapter will say it all. Why another book on Tai Chi? And I go into detail for about 5 pages on why we need a book of intermediate correction.